Keep in mind, you are a mod.
Oh, okay.
Yep, yep. Okay, it looks like we. Hey, everybody. Just making sure that we are public. You are a mod.
Oh, okay.
Yep, yep. Okay, it looks like we. Oops. Hey, everybody. Just making sure. That's funny. Whoa, what is happening? I am not understanding what's happening. Okay, sorry guys. Can you still hear me, everybody? Ah, what is what what is happening? Can you guys still hear me?
Can you hear us, guys?
Sorry, I'm having.
QP says yes.
All right, cool. Excellent, everybody. Okay, everybody, I'm glad you guys are here. And I'm glad we can go live because my icon looks like it's not showing up like normal. Hopefully the icon on your side you can see. Either way, I'm glad everybody's here. Um, I was a little worried about not being able to go live because of the I'm being demonetized right now, but hopefully I can reapply in a month. And I've made some changes, and hopefully it'll be to Google's Google. Well, I guess Google, but YouTube's liking. And I know it's kind of technical stuff. I just wanted to get that out of the way, and I'm not going to dwell on that on this episode because there's just too much stuff going on right now. So, Chick, obviously, I've had an absolutely insane, crazy, insane week. What about you? What's going on?
It's been pretty insane. Like for me, a lot of it's been looking at the maps. There's a new part of Denmark, or at least new for me. So I did stream about that. That was the last live stream there on my channel where we went through the different various changes with the map. Sweden has moved so far south that it's basically right up on top of Poland and Germany, and I wouldn't be surprised if they connect together very soon. So there's a lot of really crazy stuff going on. Um, there was only one person in the stream when I was streaming there that like knew of this place, this new part of Denmark, Bornholm, but they remembered it being in a different location, and everyone else on the stream had not seen it before. And then even further evidence I had was I had posted on Twitter, where we have our research group, a picture of Sweden being further south, and I had a couple of people comment on it. And then in the exact same picture that I had commented a few days before that, suddenly this place Bornholm showed up in the picture, and people that had commented said that wasn't there, when I commented a couple of days ago. And I said that's even more evidence for me there that it's not something that was overlooked, but it is indeed a change as only the Mandela effect can do. So yeah, that as for the map changes, and there's been a lot of Schumann resonance activity, and we're just waiting to see what happens now.
Right, right. Um, I've noticed too. Agent Smith, as always, just all over the awesome research. And he sent out that graph showing the spike, and it was a massive spike this week. I think everybody kind of felt it. I mean, I know I felt a massive shift. I've asked a couple people; they too felt the shift. Um, in terms of evidence, Agent Smith also found some more Ed McMahon evidence over on Twitter that I tweeted out. And Ed McMahon to Publishers Clearinghouse evidence, as well as Buster 1978 just today. He came out with this. It's just so great. It's the annual report of the town of Litchfield, New Hampshire. And straight up in, I guess, their annual town report, it mentions Ed McMahon and his has awarded someone. I haven't gone through it totally here because it's hard to read. It says Ed McMahon has been looking for him for 10 years to award him a Publishers Clearinghouse prize. And it says Author Lynch insisted that Ed McMahon has been looking for him for 10 years to award him a Publishers Clearinghouse prize. So obviously, that may be tongue in cheek or something. I don't know how the town of Litchfield in the 1980s worked in New Hampshire. I wasn't there. 1995, I apologize. I wasn't there. But I mean, just this Ed McMahon thing just keeps building up more and more, and it's just so crazy.
It is. There seems to be like a lot of Ed McMahon evidence showing up around the place. And like you said, it seems to be something that a lot of people remember. And until you tell them that it's a Mandela effect, they don't, they don't have any strange feelings about it. As in, it's perfectly ordinary information to them. And then you say, hey, he was never part of Publishers Clearinghouse. And then it becomes quite the topic. So it's interesting that it's in so many people's memories, even though so many people insist nothing has ever changed.
So I got this thing that says unmute. Can everybody hear Chick and myself? Just want to make sure. Can you guys confirm that for us real quick to make sure we're going smooth? Chick and myself as well. And I do apologize, everybody. And for everybody that's new, welcome. Like Dick Diamonds, and I'm seeing Indianapolis, Indiana, great new people. Yes, everybody says yes. They can hear. All good here. Thanks, Dark Slayer. Okay, guys, great. Thank you from Indianapolis. I actually have family there. Okay, so back on topic, real quick. You know the epiphany that dawned on me. Thanks, Carol. Thanks, QP. Hey, Terry, Amy. Thank you. You know what dawned on me today? How we can make this Ed McMahon argument, Chick.
How?
So, okay. So if everybody back then, like, the two pieces of evidence that Buster has, the infinite pieces of evidence that Agent Smith has produced, right? The videos where even Johnny Carson gets a check for $1 million from David Letterman for Publishers Clearinghouse. Look at it this way. If everybody was wrong back then about Ed McMahon working for Publishers Clearinghouse, as massive as a icon that he was, because again, it bears repeating, there were only 3 major networks. So the only way that you got your media was either through your 1 or 2 local networks or your 3 major networks. Because this goes even before cable TV was mainstream, right? So, all right. So imagine everybody getting Ed McMahon and where he works wrong everywhere. Okay, and they're all wrong in real time back then in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna ban anybody. Greg, you're already, I know I don't want any bad words. I want to keep it down to a minimum if we can, guys. So anyway, yeah, the Kurt Yellow Sun, the Kurt Cobain junk mail with Ed McMahon on the PCH letter. So imagine if everybody was wrong back then in real time. It would be like now people confusing Bill Gates working for Microsoft and Steve Jobs working for Apple, saying that Bill Gates works for Apple and Steve Jobs working for Microsoft. Because and if you don't like that comparison, pick another major like icon that we have, either in entertainment and who their bosses are, or someone else in entertainment that's associated. Angelia, thank you for showing up as a mod. Chick is also a mod as well, and obviously I am. So anyway, guys, that is our argument for people saying you're just misremembering. When we find these artifacts back from the 70s, 80s, and 90s when Johnny Carson was on the air, and they make a direct reference to Ed McMahon and Publishers Clearinghouse, them getting it wrong in real time back then is exactly like, and this is the argument you make, people making real-time mistakes nowadays with major icons and saying that they work somewhere. So think of someone, I don't know, what do you think about that, Chick, for an argument? You think that's a good one?
I think it is. Like, I think the best argument is that it's already in people's memories. And then obviously the second best argument being how on earth could everyone have gotten that wrong for decades on end when there were only a limited amount of networks at the time and a limited amount of big shows? Like, do they really think that Johnny Carson just had no idea what was going on? Bill Clinton has no idea what's going on. No one has any idea what's going on with Ed McMahon, and everyone's just making a mistake for 30 or 40 years on end.
Right. And no one bothered to correct them until the Mandela effect. And still to this day, when you ask people of that era, when they were like our age, when they were in their 20s, their 30s or 40s, they were, people that are now in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they all know it. Ed McMahon, Publishers Clearinghouse, right? It's only people in this era that are in their 20s, 30s, and early 40s that are going, no, you don't remember it, right? He worked for, and wiki thing, and they show, the bizarre commercial with him. Try that argument in the future, everyone. When someone says no, you got it wrong, say, show them the artifacts from that we have. The It's just, now it's almost ad infinitum, these artifacts. It's just over and over and over of people saying Ed McMahon and Publishers Clearinghouse. Said, how are these people getting this wrong in real time? If you're in 1995, if you're in 1985, if you're in 1979, when nowadays, Bill Gates, immediately people will go, Snap, they'll go Microsoft. They know right away. Bill Gates, Microsoft, or someone else, because I'm in IT. So, someone in your field that's really big time, and you're going to know where they worked, and you're not going to get it wrong because that you're in real time. And I think that's another argument that we can add to our arsenal.
I think so, and I think that the amount of evidence, like you just mentioned there, that has all compiled up about this, I think the more it keeps growing, the more ridiculous it becomes for people to say, "Oh, there's nothing to look at here," or to try and just sweep it under the rug. And I feel like it's a really good point to open the conversation with people, because a lot of people just want to pick out things that you can kind of argue about, or they insist like, oh, they remember it this way, so it has to be like, kind of like from my angle and stuff with the maps. It's a little bit more difficult because for some people, they always remember it being this way, and then there's no opening there to start a conversation about that things have changed or that things are different. Whereas
And
with the Ed
actually,
McMahon angle, it's more open.
And actually, that's why I want to concentrate on Ed McMahon. That way, it is the tip of the spear. So people will understand what you're talking about with the geo changes or the technology changes. We need Ed McMahon, I have realized, is the most concrete thing that we can latch on to, that everyone can understand, and that everyone now has an arsenal of artifacts saying Ed McMahon in the 80s, 90s, and the early 2000s and in the 70s. We have it on paper. Agent Smith has mentioned it over and over again. Buster, 1978, and a plethora of other people that have sent us artifacts in that we have. And I've done a video on, and people have done videos on. You've talked about. This is the tip of our spear that we open it up with. Why it's not, and then making the Bill Gates argument, or I don't know, Warren Buffett or whoever's big time. Make that argument to that person, and that's when you can start talking about. That's whenever geo shifts and all the other things we know, they're a fact. We know they're a fact, but it's hard to open up with that, to say that, look, man, look, I'm telling you, it's not a peninsula. The Rock of Gibraltar used to be between Spain and Morocco, and they're going to say you just don't remember right. This is how you get them to understand what we're talking about. I think Ed McMahon may be the best argument to open it with. And then from there, I've noticed they're more open when I bring up the Rock of Gibraltar, particularly if someone is from like a Navy family, like my family, and it's like generational Navy family, like it's my father, my grandfather, like everyone was in the service. They start to look at it and go, "That's whoa, whoa," and then I drop it because now, like I've mentioned to a few people on Twitter that are starting to experiment with the Mandela effect in their family. All of us veterans, we know we don't do it anymore. And I've tried to, guide people, but anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to filibuster on that. I just think your changes are just as important, but I'm trying to get a device to get people in to understand this is really happening.
For sure, and it seems to be there are certain personality types that you can start with something that's bigger or something that's kind of more out there, and then there's other personality types where you have to start with something more small and more comfortable. Not that it wouldn't completely rock somebody's world when they remember Ed McMahon and then they see it didn't happen, but for some people, if you show them a massive geo shift and they recognize it, they'll see it, they'll get scared, and they just shut down, and then that
Right.
doesn't really help.
And there's some if someone in the chat mentioned artifacts, the best way to send artifacts in is to either Asian Smith, Chick, or myself. You can, the best ways on Twitter for us. I find Twitter the best way because it's the easiest way to block and mute people and to have a real more personal conversation with someone. I'm at AI underscore SNQ. It may change. People have told me it's changed. Hey, Carol, people have told me it's changed. I don't remember it changing, but that's how the Mandela effect works. Chick, what's your handle?
My Twitter handle is at Chick Effect.
There it is. And so send in artifacts to us. Agent Asian Smith, if you, I don't know it off the hand, but all you have to do is go look on my feed, which actually I'll go do real quick right now. But in the meantime, Dick Diamonds, he mentioned because he was doing the experiment and he said he has people mad at him now. And the channel, because of, I don't know why, but my channel blew up and I've almost doubled in size in the past few weeks. I think it has a lot to do with the higher side chats. I'm sorry, guys. It's at Agent Asian Smith, all one word, at Agent Asian Smith. So one of us three, you can send the artifacts to one of us three. We all three of us will consult with ourselves, including other people like Carol and a few other people, Dark Slayer. Sometimes Angelia will get into it. Just there's like this inner circle of us. But anyway, send that to us and we'll check it out and we'll appreciate it. And you always 100% you will get the credit. We will never steal credit, I promise. But another thing Dick Diamonds was mentioning is, yeah, if you start doing the Mandela effect things to people who aren't Emmy'd and you're a new Emmy, you gotta we've all learned the hard way, very hard way, is that you can alienate people, you can make them upset. This is a core fundamental re-understanding of reality for a lot of people. So for a lot of people, it's very upsetting. And it can, and you think because it's a playful subject that it would be okay, but it's not. It really deep down it bothers people. So I should have prefaced that with my Ed McMahon test with people. Um, I'm just not used to having a bigger channel like this. I think I went from like 3,000 subscribers and I'm almost getting to 6,000. I don't know if it was the videos, if it was the THC thing, but it just blew up and I don't, whatever it was, I appreciate it, but I will now be mindful of that. And new people that are Emmys, if you're going to do experiments or if you're going to try to bring people in, another component that Chick and I and like Dark Slayer and everyone else who's a regular, like one, Eileen and all that. Everybody who's a regular knows for you to become an ME, it almost has to happen to you. You almost have to either be chosen or it's almost like a spiritual experience where something has to happen to you for you to really take it in and understand it. And, I need to say that to the new subs. So there you go.
For sure. And it's kind of like with the channel, congrats on the channel getting so much bigger. It's kind of like saying, like in my thought process now is like we don't want to run too far ahead for the people that have just started and they've just heard you speak about Ed McMahon. So we're kind of backpedaling a little bit and also trying to keep going forward because we're, on this show it's kind of like after you've seen the Mandela effects and then you start thinking about what's next and what does it mean is kind of the core of this show. Whereas a lot of Mandela effect channels, they stick more to like things that have changed, like literal Mandela effects rather than what happens now, what's going on with life now that this is the reality, whether it always was or whether we're only just seeing it now. So I think we can do a good balance between the two though, because it's almost like having two different groups listening in, but I think there's plenty of common ground there.
Well, you know what? I'm playing around with an idea because someone just brought up here about seeing 1111, which we regular MEs already know that that's a sign that you have gone through a shift, you are about to go through a shift, or you have completed a shift. Repeating numbers is one of the signs of the Schumann resonance spiking, along with your peer group and your cohorts like us, because you're now part of our peer group. You are an ME if you're seeing this and you're seeing the repeating 1111, 555, anything like that. Someone just said that, and I know we are backpedaling here, like 222, right? Exactly. It's 222, and we all just noticed that. we might want to do a roundtable explaining to people sort of, and I think it was Agent Asian Smith talking about the different levels, which is very clever, explaining the different levels, and maybe get like me, you, maybe a roundtable of people that would be comfortable discussing it in a special episode that people me and go deeper than just the discovering an ME. We're trying to figure out what it's about. We're trying to figure out how it works. We've just on this channel alone, Chick, myself, and a few other people have made some startling discoveries interact with the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is absolutely it's something that can be you can interact with. And if you do have I noticed someone said that they have a child in the room with them. This may scare them. I'll do the best I can. You won't hear me cuss. You won't hear Chick cuss. But in terms of the chat, we'll do the best we can in terms of letting people know this isn't that kind of channel where we drop F-bombs all the time. I won't ban you or anything like that for things like that, but it's just not like our vibe. But if you do have someone that's young or is not an ME, even if you're first level ME, it could kind of wig them out. So I'm just throwing that out there for the new audience. So yeah, it's a lot to deal with.
For sure. I think that well, I suppose it depends on the person. I think a lot of the people that are maybe, 20 or 30 or older and kind of set in their ways will be even more wigged out than someone that's small, but it depends on the kid. I'm surprised. Like one of the weirdest things is like how people react to this. Because you think that some people are so, level headed, like they wouldn't be freaked out by the Mandela effect as much as you'd think, and then other people that you think would be freaked out aren't. I do find it's really strange, like just talking about the social aspect of it. Of you can never quite anticipate how people are going to react to things, and even day to day, how open they're going to be with it, or how in denial they're going to be with it. And I've definitely been struggling with that a bit myself because there are people around me who were very invested in the way things were. People that have studied history, and now they're kind of angry because they're like, oh well, I studied history and now history is changing. Like, what does that mean for me personally? And I'm just like, I can't provide those answers, and I'm sorry, but we're kind of all in this thing together, regardless of the convenience or inconvenience of it. And in
Yeah.
all honesty, that's, I'm a different person, so, it's different for me. But me seeing this, I wouldn't be like, oh, it's inconvenient that I studied history, now history is different. I would be like, history is changing. We should probably pay attention to this. This is the biggest thing we've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. For me, when I became an ME or I was aware of ME, I realized that my reality and my existence was nothing like what I was taught, and that it was hey prelim and hey to I mean everybody. It's just the readers in here, just a lot of really cool people. Thank you again, everybody, for showing up. But the thing about it, like Dick Diamonds mentioned, is some of the most open-minded people freaked out the hardest. Yeah, and it is because the problem is when you're open-minded, you usually have a higher IQ, and what happens is immediately you start gaming out things, even in your I call it's the subconscious. I do the Henry Miller, I call it the substrata, because it's a bit more esoteric. It has to do more with understanding the muse whenever you're an artist. Um, so anyway, the point is, they game it out immediately, and you start to realize, reality is fluid, and that, like Chick said, that your whole past is moving and changing. And then now knowing when you've gotten as deep as we have with this channel, you start to interact with it and it responds to you. You start to realize, oh, holy smokes, what if, and then the what ifs keep adding up, and you've got to get through that stage. Hey, Agent Smith, we were talking about you, but it was all good stuff, I promise. But you've got to get through that stage. Wouldn't you say that's the case too, Chick?
Yes, but I think that that's one of the stages that even people that have accepted the Mandela effect and actively look for changes with, um, that's a step that wigs a lot of people out. The idea that not only is your environment changing, but there's a kind of consciousness to this changing.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a lot of people kind of recoil at that because it's so far out of their control. You know what I mean? And people like to have some kind of control of their environment, and that's just not the case in this situation whatsoever. I do wonder if kind of the consciousness of the Mandela effect, as we've experienced it, seems to be a little bit threatening or seems to be a little bit unfriendly to kind of stop people asking more questions and digging deeper into the situation. I think because the more we wake up to the Mandela effect, the more we understand the truth of the reality we're in, I think the less helpless we're going to be in this situation. And I
Right.
think that for this system to continue, for this game to keep playing out as it has, it really doesn't want informed players. I think that if it is a big game in motion, it would really much prefer if everybody was just unaffected and could never see when things have changed and just keep playing on these new game boards. I'm seeing it kind of as a game board, like when the countries are changing around and the players don't even see that it's changing around them. It's far easier to manipulate reality when nobody knows it's even going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were saying, I completely agree with because you and I, we've talked about this on and offline, that the Mandela effect is it is aware of us, it's aware of you. It's a give and take relationship. It is very much a thinking, it's a very sentient thinking kind of thing that is aware of you. And I'm seeing we're now getting more people than we ever had. I just want to throw this in for people who are just getting on now, and it's the first time at being in the lost and found bin. I was talking earlier, and please, it'll only take 1 minute. Ed McMahon is the tip of the spear. You want to start with the Ed McMahon Publishers Clearinghouse Mandela Effect. The reason why is go to Twitter, grab all of the great evidence that we have here that I have on the Twitter stream from Agent Smith and from Buster 1978, and it'll show you Ed McMahon in Publishers Clearinghouse in periodicals and in all kinds of different official papers, even the presidential papers from that time. And then what you do is you say, if all of those people were wrong at that time, say, who does Bill Gates work for? Everyone knows Microsoft. Who does, because that's right now, who does Steve Jobs work for or did work for? That was Apple. And then let them know that would be like someone mixing up Bill Gates and Steve Jobs with the companies that they work for, saying Steve Jobs works for Microsoft and Bill Gates works for Apple. Sorry, I just see that our numbers climbing to now 80, which is the biggest we've ever had. That, if you're here as a new ME and you want to make that argument to people, there are arguments to be made about the Mandela effect. And I truly cannot say enough that I think I'm starting to develop this idea that Ed McMahon is the tip of the spear for all of us. So sorry about that. I just wanted to say that. Hey, Carol, how you doing?
Yeah, welcome all the new people that have joined in. We were just actually mentioning earlier before the numbers started really climbing there about how we're trying to have a good balanced discussion between subjects that are more for when you've been in the Mandela effect for a while and you want to know what's next. Like you've seen the changes and you're like, okay, what does this mean about reality, about consciousness, about what's actually going on around us? And then, of course, the other things that we're mentioning are for the people who are new to the Mandela effect, who are at the point of saying, oh my gosh, reality is literally changing. Like, I remember this one way, it's a totally different way, and I'm not the only one that remembers it this way. So trying to keep it balanced between the two camps. We were just talking about there how the Mandela effect, once you see the changes happening, you'll realize that there's kind of a consciousness behind these changes happening. And we've discussed a couple of times on this show about that consciousness and about how it's not the friendliest of things. It seems to be kind of a threatening force. And I've likened it to before that space that you kind of go to in between being awake and asleep when you're not supposed to be very conscious in that space, but you are. There's almost kind of the same kind of shadow in the background. And I'm not sure how many people have experienced that, but it's almost like experiencing that, but in your waking life, when you've stumbled across something that you really shouldn't have seen, and you get that feeling like you're seeing something that perhaps was forbidden knowledge in the past, except now there's so many people that have seen it. It's just something that isn't going away. But that could be another reason why, for the most part, from the vast population, you're going to get resistance, even if they do remember Ed McMahon, or even if they do remember whatever other Mandela effect you're talking about. Most people, I would say about 2 out of 3, will give you resistance, even if they remember it. They'll turn around and say, no, I don't remember it, as soon as you say it's a Mandela effect. Or they'll give some other reason to give you resistance or to gaslight you into thinking that you're wrong. And really, the best place to come from is speak on the things that you 100% remember, that you're completely confident with. Nobody can gaslight you and say, are you sure? Well, maybe you just don't know. Like, come at it with things that you know, such as Ed McMahon or whatever other Mandela effect it is, that it really is concrete in your mind. And in that, you'll be able to go past the level of resistance and perhaps even open the doorway of conversation with people who were resistant at first. I think for the people, for that 1 out of 3 that isn't so resistant, they're already well on their way to not only accepting the Mandela effect, but finding new Mandela effects. And also coming up with theories as to what is the bigger picture in all this, and why are there so many different variations in the same things. For some Mandela effects, it's not just that there's 2 versions of something. Sometimes there's 4 or 5 different versions, like of the same song, or of the same restaurant logo, or the same, like the name of a restaurant. There could be 4 different versions of it, or there could be 5 different versions of it. And you could see all of the different versions change, or you could meet different people that all remember it a different way. And in the past, we would have just said, oh, you don't remember what you're talking about. And now we actually see reality residue showing up for different versions of things. It's not just as simple as insisting that everyone else is wrong anymore.
Yeah, I just banned my first live person, so hopefully he stays banned. And just so everybody knows, I know the channel is growing now. We literally have double the size. So I'm gonna have to add on more. Anybody like Carol or someone really close, obviously like Agent Smith. I already have 2, including myself, mods, but I'm looking for more of the old school crew. If you're into it, let me know. If not, that's totally cool. I don't want to put pressure on anyone. So but you'll be out of here. You'll be out of here so fast. I have no time for it. I don't care. And we've been doing this for 2 years. We've had a core group, and everyone is welcome. Okay, I'm going to say this now. Everyone is welcome, but I won't take it on the channel. I won't take it on the channel. And if you're new and you start dropping like F-bombs and you start and you start slipping it in, you are out of here. There'll be no tolerance for it, because we've got our cool group already. Okay. So we don't need that here. But if you're here and you're new and you're here to be cool, then that's fine. Anyway, sorry, we can move on. I apologize.
No problems. So let's just, I suppose, Tex and Tom said, I'll mod if you want. There's a couple of different people talking there in the chat. Oh, some people talking about NPCs. That's a good point. NPC did not start off as a political term. It kind of got hijacked by politics more recently, but that's obviously was a gamer term to start with. But in the kind of way that it's used in the Mandela effect community, some people refer to the people who are 100% resistant against seeing this or acknowledging this as NPC people, like non-player characters. Some people find that a bit derogatory, and other people think it's okay. That's, up to personal taste. But just in case somebody says NPC in the chat, that's what it means, is people that don't see it, refuse to see it, or they just have no cognition of it whatsoever. Or in other cases, after you've been severely Mandela affected, it can seem like a lot of the people around you are different. And that it can also be used to describe that phenomenon. Because It's not just about the things around you changing, but the people around you can be very, very different as well. And the social impacts of the Mandela effect is something that has been discussed, since day one, but unfortunately we don't really know how best to tackle it, except to get along as well as best as you can. There doesn't seem to be a way to kind of change people back to how they were. You just kind of have to try and find the best spot to be with how things are now.
Yeah, totally. And the thing about that too is I think what the hold on. Brian Taylor said, "Why would you want someone calling you a snake oil salesman?" Brian, who are you talking about, man? I'll 86 them. Done. Done. I don't care. I don't have time for it. I'm setting precedent right now, man. Who is it? Who is it? Because I'm not going to do this. Just let me know who it is, dude. And they're out. Is it that edgy boy or what, Boy J? So because ABC is Christian and said something he believed is he's banned. Okay, see how this is. Yep. Okay, you're banned. Out. Edgy boy. See ya. Remove. Hold on, guys.
What happened?
This guy says something about why I banned ABC. First off, we're here to talk about Mandela effect. We're not here to talk about how I administer this channel. The administration of this channel is not in your hands. I'm not here to debate it. There's millions of other channels you can go to, okay? And you can do it anywhere you want on your own time. None of us get paid to do this. And I've been demonetized, but the amount of money that I've made in 2 years here, you got to be kidding me. And I use that and actually I've used it, the me being demonetized isn't something I wanted to talk about, but I use that as a tool to see if I'm going too far. And I go, and I guess I went too far. So I've been trying to change things. And you guys will notice too, there'll be subtle changes with the way that we put videos out and how I metadata stuff. And hopefully with Google or excuse me, YouTube, they'll I've been in contact with someone and they won't give me advice, but I think I've been trying to make changes blindly. So anyway, all right, guys, sorry, back on. I didn't mean to do that again. I apologize, but understand the responsibility about being a new ME, because I'm seeing about 45, 50 new people here. The responsibility that you have is one, to break it to people you think that can handle it. And then the second thing is you've got to realize, Chick and we have, I think, 100% demonstrated over, the 41 episodes that we've worked on. The Mandela effect will respond to you. It will in a frightening way and in a personal way that makes you sound ridiculous unless you're talking to other MEs. And another thing is that, it's 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 almost like it knows you or something. You know what I'm saying? It's so bizarre. And for me, it was a car crash. Chick talked about it, and then I talk about Andy Warhol on the moon. So I'll get into that another time, but I don't want to rehash all of our history. So anyway, the shift this week was pretty hardcore.
It was for sure. There was another shift there, like after the Bornholm shift. There was another slight shift. I'm waiting to see if more geo changes come in, but so far it seems like it was actually, I saw it on Dale Dufay's channel, who does a lot of great map videos as well. And he was saying that the northern coast of Australia seems to be shrinking. It seems to be just like somebody cut like a big strip of the northern coast of it away. So Australia is a lot smaller than it was before, which I'm surprised about, because I thought that instead of shrinking, that it would just continue pushing northwards and just, touch the other countries and eventually completely just join up with the other countries, because it's been on this wild trajectory northwards. And that's usually a good one for the geoshift changes, is ask people how far South Australia is, like how down under is it? And they'll say, oh, it's way south, whatever, and show them how close it is to the equator now. And for the most part, that'll wake people up. We're like, oh, it's almost right up on top of the equator. Wow, I wonder why anyone ever thought it was far south.
Yeah, and Australia, for some reason, it seems to be kind of incredibly, like, it's almost center stage with all these changes. And the biggest thing is that there's World War II changes with the Battle of Darwin, um, with the UK handing over to the Axis powers during World War II, handing over sort of the sword, so to speak, because they lost the island of Singapore. Churchill saying it was one of the most humiliating and worst defeats of British Empire history. I mean, there's so much around Australia. The POW count that they were marching around 180,000. It's just so much. It's just so crazy. So Australia is, and then like you're talking about, the geo changes there are just off the charts in comparison to. It seems to be like Australia, Sweden, and then sort of around Japan. A lot of it is in the east, but the West also experiences some of it, but it's mostly Australia, it seems.
Yes, like for a lot of new MEs, if you point out South America to them, they'll be rather surprised. But again, it depends on which world map they're coming from, because to make it all the more confusing, we don't all come from the same place. Some people have grown up with a map that looks very similar to this one, and some people have grown up with a world map that looks very, very, very different. But it is usually one of the things that shocks people. They go, wow, I thought South America was south of North America instead of in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And then you can kind of go from there. Newfoundland has been floating off eastwards as well. It's almost underneath Greenland perfectly at this point.
Yeah, and the big thing about, well, the one of the big ME changes. Well, I've talked about that one before, but for me personally, and I don't hear this one very often, I personally remember New Zealand being one island, but that one seems to be not as big. I mean, everyone else talks about South America. Oh, and a new one. It's not new, but someone brought it up in the chat, and it's moving so fast it's hard to keep up. But that Sicily is now 1 mile from the boot, and eventually, you and I have talked about it, and a lot of people in the chat, that eventually they're going to have to figure out an excuse when these places touch, because it's going to happen.
Well, I would have thought they would have needed an excuse for Sicily almost touching Italy, but it didn't seem to matter to anyone. As in, the few people that saw it, I guess, kept their mouths shut, and everyone else had no idea what was going on. But I'm just like, Sicily was nowhere near as close to Italy. Like, especially now, my gosh, Sicily is almost like gone south of Italy, and it's almost touching Italy, and all these islands appeared north of Sicily now, and it's just, which are very, like, heavily populated islands as well. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on there. And yes, the New Zealand is one of the most controversial geo changes. For the most part, if you bring up New Zealand, everyone will go insane, which is something that's like still kind of makes me chuckle. Like for the 2 years that I've been doing my channel, whenever I talk about how I remember New Zealand, people lose their minds because that's a very rare one, and I remember it the same as you do. I remember it being New Zealand, singular, not lands. It was
Yep.
one island, and it was north of Australia. And most people, even Mandela affected people now, remember it being south of Australia. There's very few people that are still traveling along this trajectory that are from a place where it was north of Australia, which is
Right.
very strange for us because that's where it always was. So I suppose, what can you even say to people when they're just like, I don't remember it that way? Then it's like, well, no matter how much evidence in the world I get for you, then it's not going to have the same impact because you have no familiar feelings with it. Whereas for someone that does have familiar feelings, they don't need a mountain of reality residue. They know themselves, like, wow, this is crazy. And for people coming from the old Earths, shall we say, or the really far out Earths on the edge of the Sagittarius arm, it seems like the whole world is turning into a Pangea, as in all the countries are getting closer and closer together. The oceans are getting smaller and smaller. Everything is pretty much touching, except, of course, Hawaii and things like that. But everything is way too close together. And every single shift, and we get up to 2 or 3 shifts a month, they're getting closer each and every time. So I don't even know how much time is left before it's unrecognizable as to what it was before.
Right, right, right. So, if anybody, yep, yep. Thank you for 86 in that guy. Okay, cool. I appreciate that. Perfect, Angelia. And so, all right. Well, for me too. I'm wondering. Are we going to get to a point where, I thought the Gibraltar would be the one, right? So I thought it would be the one that would wake up a lot of people. And then it became just some random episode, right?
It.
So
Mhm.
no, no, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, when Gibraltar was brought to the forefront recently, when it was all over the news headlines because of Brexit and they were trying to discuss the terms of Gibraltar, I thought everyone would wake up and say, what's wrong with the island of Gibraltar? Like, why is it not an island? And not one person mentioned that. Not one newscaster, not one random person that they interviewed on the street. And I was so disappointed because I was like, oh, everyone's talking about Gibraltar right now. This will be an amazing opportunity for people to say, what the heck happened?
Right,
What's
right.
wrong with it?
We've got almost 100 people now, and it's the most we've ever had. So I'm going to do this one more time because we only do hour episodes. That makes sure that it keeps it, the audience wanting to come back for more because we're just that good. But anyway, anybody who is a new ME and you're here from THC, thank you very much. If you're here from whatever source, I want to thank you very much. If you're new to the Mandela effect and you want to be able to make a coherent argument with someone, the best way to do it is use the Ed McMahon Publishers Clearinghouse one. What you do is there's plenty of artifacts linking Ed McMahon to the Publishers Clearinghouse during that period, meaning during the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And I've put them all up on my Twitter stream. And why those old artifacts are important, because people are going to say, oh, you're just misremembering. Well, these artifacts are people misremembering in real time back then. So it would be like people misremembering in real time now that Bill Gates doesn't work for Apple or Steve Jobs never worked for Microsoft. You see? So there's people back then for those, and no one told them that. And these are in huge documents like the presidential papers, like these fiscal papers or whatever they may be from Rhode Island. Johnny Carson handing a Publishers Clearinghouse, or David Letterman handing Carson a check with Publishers Clearinghouse. That was in real time that should have been corrected, and it wasn't. And that's what you need to make the comparison for people that you're bringing into the Mandela effect. If you're already immied and you're frustrated and you can't grab something because where we're at, we've all accepted it here, us and the old Chick, myself, and the crew here. So we're on to discussing geo shifts like it's there. So for other people, that's something you can do. Or if you suspect someone that is frustrated, um, and you think it's safe to bring them in as an ME, one way you can do, if they're of a certain age, you can do the Ed McMahon thing, have them explore it on their own, and then they'll become ME'd. So that's just a couple ways if you're brand new. I had to take the opportunity once again, simply because we've never had this many people watching. So anyway, I'm sorry. I apologize, Chick.
No problem. I know it's a different environment for us. Usually we've kind of got like a lot of familiar faces, so we just kind of go from one point to another. But with the Mandela effect, it's difficult to do that because, like we mentioned before, there's people that are still seeing the reality changes, the logo changes, the things like that, and then there's other people who are like, okay, I've seen that. Now I want to think about what does it mean and why. What's the bigger picture? What's happening with reality? One of the things we were talking about there was geo shifts, and I was mentioning how I just recently started seeing another geo shift channel, Dale Dufay, and he had some very interesting theories about how we personally are shifting from one place to another. And for the people who are just beginning, that might be too much to talk about. But for the people who aren't, who are onto the next stage of the Mandela effect, maybe stage 2 or something, I'm not sure how you would you would say it, but kind of the change it has on your consciousness to realize that reality is fluid and it actually changes, and things that you can touch in your hands can actually change. When you have that moment, that Ed McMahon moment, or whatever that moment is for you, then you can, you're never going to be looking back again. You're only going to be looking forward. And I would say that I think that there are some very interesting theories going on. My kind of feeling had been that we are moving from place to place, but we're seeing patterns, because the world maps that we're seeing, because maps are my angle, are all moving in a certain pattern. It's not just that, oh, there's been a shift and suddenly all the countries are different and they're laid out differently. Usually when we see a shift, we see that all the countries have moved closer together and the oceans have gotten smaller and everything is contracting and the amount of people that live in the world is smaller, and everything is just kind of getting smaller and smaller. And that's kind of what I've been seeing the entire time for 2 years now, is kind of this crazy, it's kind of a backwards and forwards progression, because it's almost as if geologically things are moving into a Pangea formation, but a lot of the artifacts and a lot of things like that are looking older and newer in some cases. And that, like, one of the reasons why the Lost and Found bin was such a good name for the show that we have here is that there seems to be, it's almost like a lost and found bin of reality. Every now and then some article will come up and say, oh, we've discovered this entire city from ancient, who knows what, Sumeria or Egypt, or this ancient Chinese underground village, or just something crazy that couldn't possibly have been hidden, pops into reality, amazes everyone, disappears out of reality again. You'll see as you go into this that it's so much more than just Chick-fil-A versus Chick-fil-A with a K at the end of the chick. But that's a good starting point. That it's important to start there. One of the things that you might start with, as well as Ed McMahon, is the dime. A lot of people remember Eisenhower on the dime. And if you ask people about that and then you show them that Eisenhower was never on the dime, that can wake a lot of people up because it's tangible. They can understand that. They've held a lot of dimes in their life, presumably.
That's awesome. And other channels a long time ago mentioned cities popping up that are just like empty, particularly over in, like, I think it's like Kazakhstan or something like that. And I forget what channel, and it was like a year ago. But the point is that things like rainbow mountains, rainbow trees, that lemon that looks like spiky haircuts that I showed everybody on my Twitter feed, just these bizarre things that kind of just pop into reality, and they were always there. Like, oh, and in case you're new to the channel, check out the Moon Museum. There's a museum on the moon, and that's always my snarky, because to me it's just what I get hung up, I've been told, on really weird stuff. But Andy Warhol being on the moon just tickles me to no end. I just cannot stop thinking and laughing about it because it seems so ridiculous. And there's a moon museum and it exists and it's real. So, yeah, there is that. That's kind of freaks me out. But yeah, Super Blood Wolf Moon this tomorrow, I guess.
Yes. And the amount of crazy moons that we've seen since this whole thing has started has got to be, I'd say it's got to be the most crazy moons any of us have seen in our lives, right? At least for me, yes.
And it's all kind of like, there's certain things that are kind of like points where the Mandela effect kind of focuses on. And certainly the moon definitely is one of those points, that is definitely kind of a focus of the Mandela effect for some reason. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, like, at least I've never seen such a wild amount of not just supermoons, but really crazy moons. Like, they keep saying, oh, this latest copper super blood purple moon, whatever it is that shows up every couple of months, it hasn't happened for 100 years or 150 years or something, but they happen like every couple of months now. So it couldn't be that these things only happen every 150 years or every 70 years or something like that, because the 13 moons a year that we get now, so many of them are extraordinary, once in a lifetime type moons that it doesn't even make any sense. And then they never even mention that the moon is out all day and it'll be in a different phase during the daytime than it is that same night.
That's another thing. Good point. I'm seeing the moon in the daytime almost every single day now, and I swear the sun's not. It used to be on one side and nothing would be on the other, and then it was the sun on one side and the moon was on the complete opposite. It's almost like the moon is inching towards the sun, and it is just weird and bizarre, and I don't understand that. Is that something you're experiencing? And I don't even know if that's a Mandela effect. That's just something weird in my environment that I'm seeing.
Oh yeah, I, I'm just like I'm trying to find any kind of pattern that I can see with the moon, because it used to be quite predictable, and I used to be able to see it always from a balcony off my home. And now it's never out there. It's always at different angles of the building. It's always in different parts of the sky. It's out all day and all night. It can go up to 3 or 4 different phases during a 24-hour period. It's, up on top of the sun, and then it's there on the other side of the sky, and it's way up high and it's way down low, just at times that don't make any sense. And I just don't understand what is going on with it and why nobody seems to, the people that are very much into watching the planets, why nobody is freaking out and saying anything about it. I not so much confronted, but asked a group that was very much into tracking the moon what they thought about it, and they seemed to be in a complete deep trance. They didn't seem to at all understand what I was saying. And I said, well, what about the Cheshire Cat moons that we're seeing all the time? Which the technical term for them is wet moons. And I never saw that before the Mandela effect hit me in 2016. But it's called a wet moon when it's just that little smile, that little Cheshire Cat, just the moon being lit up at the bottom.
Oh, wow.
And they had never heard of the term, and I had to send them the terms and educate them. And I was like, you guys are the experts. Why am I telling you about this? And they just didn't answer me then. They just shut me out.
And someone mentioned too, and it's going so fast now, I've got to learn to keep up. But someone mentioned, yeah, the white sun is an absolute centerpiece of some of the topics we talk about here. The white sun is an absolute. It is one of the major things that lets you know that you're an ME, is that you lived in a world of a yellow sun and now you live in a white sun. It's part of the reason why, we've talked about shifting from Sagittarius to Orion. And even now, if you Google it, it's getting kind of it's not as black and white anymore. Have you noticed that, Chick, when you Google Sagittarius and where we are, and it's kind of getting fuzzy. It's very strange.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that Google doesn't want to give straight answers about, and that's one of them. I definitely, for me, the change was striking and shocking. There's been a couple of things that are just striking and shocking about. First of all, the white sun was completely, one day the sun was yellow, and then the next day it was completely white, and it was a much smaller sun, and the light coming from it was completely different, and it was massively shocking. And the truth community just said, oh, well, chemtrails, like it slowly turned white in the 90s or something. And I'm like, no, that's not what's happened for me. That's not what I'm experiencing here. This is an entirely different sun going on here. And the times when it's getting dark in the day, because the earth is smaller and there's, whatever's going on with the day and the nighttime, for people that were closer to the equator, there used to be a lot more hours, in the daytime in the winter. And people that were closer to the North Pole, the daytime in the winter was very, very short. And now I call people that, I family and people I know in different countries, and I find that it's people living closer to the equator and people living over there in Western Europe. It was getting dark at about 5 o'clock in the day in both places, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Unless the circumference has dropped so much or the earth has tilted so much that we're, in serious trouble here with the amount of daylight per winter and then per summer. I did see an article, I believe it was the day before yesterday, and I reposted on my Twitter that the magnetic north is moving more than 30 miles a year, and scientists have no idea what to do.
Yeah, that's one of the fears they're talking about. They're afraid it will reach, and this is just mainstream science articles. This isn't ME stuff. And not that we hold another thing, scientism is not a friend here. I love science. I love the scientific method. And I think I speak for Chick when we say we're all for science, but we machine of science, but that's a whole other episode that we've talked about ad nauseum. But anyway, if you read, a mainstream, article, they actually worry about it flipping fast. Like it'll go to a certain point and then it's almost like, a roller coaster and it'll and just kind of flip is kind of the worry. But and they assure us that we'll be just fine other than some communications being disrupted. But I don't know, man. That seems like a tall order to me.
Yes, and I consider it part of the geo shifting. I do think that it is part of the effect, and they have no idea what to do, and they're probably going to say, "Oh, it's global warming or it's something or other," and I'm just like, global warming does not, I don't think that it could possibly cover what's going on here. I think it's far more likely with the countries moving around, with the not just shifting around, but changing shape, changing coastline, changing area, like what pressure that might be putting on the Earth's crust, what's going on here with the magnetic aspects of it. I think that it's all kind of falling into the Mandela effect
Hmm.
changes that we're seeing with the world. And unfortunately, the experts don't seem to be working on that angle. And since they're not working on it and they're just kind of off on some other train of thought, it kind of concerns me that they aren't really prepared for what's going on here.
Yeah, yeah. All right, guys, it's 3 o'clock. That's it. That's how we do it here. Short and sweet. 1 hour. Everybody here. It's a lot of new people. So just welcome. Come back. We do it every week the same time, and we talk for just an hour. But like I said, if you have any artifacts you want to send to us, send it to Chick or myself or Agent Asian Smith, or just anybody else, in the core team that is, into it. So thanks a lot. Any last words, Chick?
Yeah, just everybody take care of yourselves. There's a lot of Schumann resonance activity. Some people are more sensitive to that than others, but it can mean, headaches, tiredness. For some people, even pain in their teeth, like teeth sensitivity. Like there can be all kinds of different side effects from major Schumann resonance activity. And we are currently experiencing geo shifts. So it could be a little bit hectic for a day or so. Hopefully it'll calm down then. So please just, take care of yourselves. Don't be too hard on yourselves. It's outside of you. It's outside of your control. So don't blame yourself if you're, not able to get everything done that you're trying to get done. Just know that we're all in this together. We're going to keep a watch on all the changes that are happening, and we're all here to support each other.
Well said. I don't have much to say after that. That was so well said. So we'll see you next week, guys. See ya.